Well, last week turned into an even larger discussion than I had imagined. Thank you to everyone who commented both on YouTube and Reddit. This channel will be nothing without the debates you guys afford it. Turning to this week, however, it's back to the norm. Last week I left you with the clue, what is Fluttershy a personification of in the field of ethics? And the answer, as you may have gathered by now, is environmental ethics. The way I'm going to approach the topic this week is to first explain the view most widely held in our world, conservation ethics, before contrasting it with the view of Equestria, which I will argue is the Libertarian Extension. Hopefully, in this way we will be able to see both the pros and cons in each position, and be able to ascertain which is the one we should believe ourselves. Environmental ethics is based upon two opposite interpretations of humanity's role in nature, which are in turn interpretations of what the Bible claims is humanity's role. Whether one is a Christian or not, understanding and answering this question is crucial to any position in environmental ethics. The Bible passage most often used to illustrate this divide is the famous line from Genesis concerning mankind. Then God said, "Let them rule over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the sky, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps upon the earth." Now this seems like a relatively straightforward passage commanding humans to rule animals, and by extension the environment. However, the issue in interpretation comes in what is taken to be meant by rule, either do as we will with, or guide and protect as a caring ruler in God's stead. The Roman Catholic Church has from the 3rd century onwards generally favoured the former, and this approach, called dominion theology, is what we shall concern ourselves with first. Dominion theology can be summed up by the famous theologian and pillar of Catholic teaching, St. Thomas Aquinas. He writes, "It matters not what man does to animal, for God has subjected all things to man's power." In other words, since God has granted humanity dominion over animals, we can treat them as we will. From this, the doctrine is extended to encompass the environment. Due to the Catholic Church's dominance in the Western world for much of its history, this view went unchallenged for many years, and is still predominantly the view held by the modern world. Even atheists tend to take the position, as it allows for continued exploitation of natural resources, and it is widely accepted that animals' lack of rationality gives them lower class status. Nevertheless, the realities of global warming caused the Dominion school to rethink their approach to the environment, resulting in the position known as conservation ethics. The position is simple: humans cannot live without the environment. The current use of natural resources and animals will result in irreparable damage to the environment, and thus we must conserve the environment in order to preserve humanity. Notice that the argument gives the environment instrumental value, value relative to its use, not intrinsic value, value in and of itself. This means the ethic is based entirely on human safety, and does not give the environment or animals any status more than dominion. This means, under conservation ethics, as soon as the world is out of danger, abusing it, and animals, is no longer ethically wrong, as the only reason it is considered wrong in the first place is if it harms humans. This anthropocentric view is contrasted with the view taken by the show, Stewardship, and the Libertarian Extension. Stewardship refers to the other interpretation of Genesis, namely that our rule is predicated on being stewards in God's stead. Thus we must care for animals and the environment, just as he cared for us. The secular equivalent is the rising and even law-backed animal rights movement, which seeks the same place for man in the environment, as protector rather than tyrant. As I have said in my Celeste video, the ruler of Equestria is strikingly similar to the Christian God, and no less so in this matter.
What is that thing? What happened to Philomena?
This is Philomena. She's quite a sight, as I said, but nothing unusual for a phoenix. Isn't that right, Philomena?
A phoenix?
A phoenix is a majestic and magical bird. While it appears healthy and happy most of the time, every so often it must renew itself by shedding all of its feathers and bursting into flame. Rather melodramatic, if you ask me. It then rises from the ashes, fresh as a daisy. All just a normal part of the life cycle of a phoenix. I'm afraid mischievous little Philomena here took the occasion to have a little fun with you, Fluttershy. Say you're sorry, young lady.
Celestia is shown addressing this animal as an equal, as a friend, and continues this approach in all her dealings with the various races in the show, demonstrating the intrinsic value of all animals and emphasizing the stewardship reading of the show. The ethic that follows from this position is called the Libertarian Extension, and can be summarized as the belief that the environment has intrinsic value and thus should be protected based upon this alone, and irrespective of the necessity to do so. This means if global warming was prevented, the ethic would still hold that the environment should be protected. The case for this view is argued for in MLP in a similar way to one of its leading proponents, Peter Singer. In his book, Practical Ethics, Singer explains the logic of the view using his concept of speciesism. He suggests all ethical value is ascribed to things based on what he calls the principle of equal consideration of interests, which implies that our concern for others ought not be based upon what they are like. In other words, we assign ethical intrinsic value to those beings which can have interests, as they are in that way the same way as we are. Singer continues by showing that this leads to the belief in an intrinsic value of humanity. It is on this basis that we are able to say that the fact that someone is not a member of the same race does not entitle us to exploit them. This is essentially the message of Hearthswarming Eve, that being of a different race is not grounds for inequality. However, since we have used this logic to afford value to humanity, and ponies, I guess, we must necessarily follow the logic through to its conclusion, the value of animals. Singer writes, "A mouse has an interest. The fact that other animals are less intelligent, just as in the case of some humans, does not mean that their interests can be disregarded. From this we can see how all animals, and all living beings, from single-celled bacteria to vast sprawling redwood trees, can be taken as having intrinsic value and be worthy of protection, as all of them can have interests." Thus, Singer proposes condemning speciesism in the same way we condemn racism, and thus argues for the Libertarian Extension. In the same way, MLP shows many examples of animals' interests being taken into consideration. The equal treatment the main six give their supposed pets, the equal citizenship afforded to the dragon and Spike, and most prominently of all, Fluttershy.
You really should have come to me sooner. You are carrying so much tension in that shoulder. Don't worry, Philomena. I know what'll make you feel better. Wait right here. I have just the thing. Ah, refreshing. How's that feeling now for you, Philomena? Better?
Fluttershy is, as I previously asserted, a living embodiment of environmental ethics, having devoted her entire life to the protection of the environment, from domestic animals to wild bears. Fluttershy cares for the interests of these animals as much as that of any pony, and is the strongest argument in favour of the show's Libertarian Extension ethic. Now I feel like I'm forgetting something.
What is that thing?
They must be Windigos.
Windigos?
My mentor, Star Swirl the Bearded, taught me about them. They're winter spirits that feed off fighting and hatred. The more hate the spirit feels, the colder things become.
Then this is our fault. We three tribes. We brought this blizzard to our home by fighting and not trusting each other. Now it's destroying this land too.
And now our bodies will become as cold as our hearts. All because we were foolish enough to hate.
Well, I don't hate you. I actually hate Commander Hurricane a lot more than I hate you guys. Actually, I don't really hate her. I just really dislike her.
Yes, the Windigos. Hearthswarming Eve introduced us to the Windigos, and along with it created an interesting parallel with a more fringe environmental ethic known as Gaia Hypothesis. Pioneered by James Lovelock, this theory states that, brace yourselves, the Earth is like a living organism that is angry with us for abusing it, and the natural disasters that are rocking our world are its attempt at redressing the balance. Now as silly as this sounds, I didn't bring it up just to laugh at it. There is an important lesson in environmental ethics to be learned from both this and the Windigos. Both Gaia Hypothesis and the Windigos are best viewed, in my belief, as metaphors. In the Windigos case, this is because, unlike the majority of the show, Hearthswarming Eve is shown as a myth, rather than happening in real time, and thus, like its equivalent the Nativity, should not be taken at face value. All stories are embellished with time. Either way, the Windigos, just like Gaia, attack the ponies for causing disturbances in the world, the only difference being their failure to value each race's interests as well as presumably the other animals, which as Singer has demonstrated is merely a more heinous version of what humanity has done. Putting aside the supposed volitions of the entities involved, however, we can see the importance that these two stories have of taking in the big picture when assessing environmental ethics. Assessing our role in the environment, be it dominion or stewardship, and creating ethical systems based on this is not enough. The environment encompasses all of life, and thus to assess the ethics of it, it is necessary to contemplate the entirety of life together, rather than any one bit in seclusion. The personification of nature proposed in both Gaia theory and the Windigos seem to be pointing in this direction, and I believe that only this way can we learn the truth of environmental ethics. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed yourself, and maybe learned something too. Please let me know your thoughts about the various positions discussed. Does conservation ethics make most sense to you, or do you side with the show's Libertarian Extension? In particular, I'm most interested in hearing your thoughts on the eco-holist approach of Gaia theory. Am I right to assert that taking life as a whole is the only way to solve environmental ethics, even if Gaia Hypothesis might be flawed itself? Or is finding our role enough? Let me know in the comments. Until next time then, this is Knightsphere the Gnostic. Goodbye.